The Lincoln County Jane Doe, identified as Melinda Lou Barnhouse. On September 17, 1989, a man was at a rest stop in Lincoln County, Missouri. He stopped to use the bathroom and stretch his legs, and this was off Interstate 55. A man who was traveling from Tennessee to Mississippi made the discovery of a woman behind the bushes. He quickly went to use a phone and contact emergency services, and this would eventually include the Lincoln County coroner. They noted that she was not wearing any clothing except white athletic socks that were rolled down. Those socks had 3 blue stripes on them. Whoever placed her where she was found didn't even make the slightest effort to cover her up. They simply left her and walked away. She had no obvious wounds or markings on her body. Originally, they had no idea what her COD was. However, the way she was found made it clear it wasn't natural. Eventually, they would determine the cause was asphyxiation, but they couldn't prove whether or not an SA had happened, although it suspected it probably did. They believed the entire thing happened elsewhere before she was moved to that location. I saw a warning that a postmortem photo is available, which I obviously don't show here, but I always mention them in case others want to look. But I'm not sure it really is a postmortem. It's listed as a recreation. I think it's one of those where the base is a postmortem and they digitally manipulate it to open eyes or change a facial expression. This one, however, is a judgment call. I sometimes use those manipulated pictures because they're not really a postmortem, but this one looks like a postmortem to me, despite the manipulation, and I don't feel like I can use it. However, for most of us who pay attention to Doe cases, you might want to check out the picture because it's one that I know I have seen quite a bit. Her eye color was questionable, and as I've talked about on here before, eye color can appear differently as the time passes. I started to say that eye color can change, and I may have worded it that way in other videos, but that's not really the truth. As a result of those examining her, rather they can just appear differently. A film appears over the eye itself, and sometimes it makes it appear opaque. This is why someone might look to have blue eyes despite having brown. So what happens isn't so much that the color changes, as the cornea color stays the same, but the film itself does change. They suspected that the woman may have had Down syndrome, saying that some of her characteristics appeared to the coroner to match this. They also noted that her teeth were in really bad condition, which to them further backed up the possibility of Downs, as those with Down syndrome often have irregularities with their teeth. She wasn't very tall. She was 5'2", or about 157 centimeters. She had curly brown hair and was believed to be mid-teens to 35. Unlike the majority of these cases, however, 2 men were charged and imprisoned for the crime of what was done to her. One of the men confessed but also minimized the crime, saying that she was a working girl from New Orleans that they picked up with the intention of robbing and instead took her life, as if she somehow deserved it. One of the men, Alfred Case, is in prison in Mississippi, and he's not up for parole until 2030, but there's no word on what happened to the other man. This is another case that we can thank Othram Labs for. The DNA would indicate that she was, in fact, Melinda Lou Barnhouse, who was originally from Maryland. I wish it was clearer exactly what Melinda's situation was. She was just 18, barely an adult. There's also no proof that she was working the streets in order to support herself, and it could be what they considered a degrading statement to further minimize the crime. It's hard to say. I do know she was 18, just barely an adult. She had her whole life ahead of her, and that was taken away. We know she graduated from high school from the pictures here, and she was just 18, that she was found in September of 1989. So likely she graduated only a few months before this happened. I have no idea what went wrong, but obviously something very bad happened to her. While it appears family released the 2 photos of her, there so far hasn't been other pictures or mentions of her circumstances. Should that change, I will make an editor's note here now. Melinda Lou Barnhouse was found 1,070 miles or 1,722 kilometers away from home. Melinda went unidentified for 34 years. Had she lived, she would be 52 years old today. The Warner Springs Jane Doe, identified as Claudette Jean Zebolsky Powers. In 1986, a couple was walking around the Los Coyotes Indian Reservation in Warner Springs, California.
It was here that they stumbled across a campsite, and within it, her remains were found. The COD is listed as foul play, but not saying exactly what happened. No ID was found in the area. A detective would conclude as there was no one missing in the area, and the case itself went cold. A man was also found in that same area, and it's believed he could possibly be related to the case. However, in his case, he was found 14 miles or 22 kilometers away, but it's in what was described as a desolate road in an unincorporated community. And in this case, she was found only 24 miles or 39 kilometers away from home. Both cases both had on thermal jackets, and in part their clothing is what was believed to tie them together, and why they think she probably knew the man. It appears his case was also foul play, so it's possible one of them was transported to a different area. Eventually, the authorities turned to the only viable tool they had left, genetic genealogy. It was that powerful tool in the end that would give the woman back her name. It eventually led to 3 generations of Claudette Powers' family, her mother, sister, and daughter. It turns out that Claudette disappeared in September of 1984 when she was just 22 years old. At the time that she was found, she would have been 24. No one knows where she was in those in-between years between 1984 and 1986. Or at least that's what's suggested in one of the articles I read. She was found so close to home that I'm not sure. I'm also not finding a postmortem interval, so for all I know, she was there for 2 years. Although a different article does suggest she hadn't been there long. It's so hard, and often the articles aren't fully accurate, and that's all I have to go on. Her younger sister Laura would say Claudette was a very loving and caring mom. She loved her kids very much, and they loved her very much. We know that Claudette was a Michigan native, and she had just moved to California around 1984. It appears this was the last time her family spoke to her, and of course that was 2 years before she was found. They believe she had moved to either San Diego or Escondido, and that she was working in a neighborhood restaurant. It's important that if anyone knew her back then that they come forward. They do know that she divorced her husband in 1983. It's not clear where her kids were from 84 on. It's possible they were living with the ex-husband. Her family has asked that those with knowledge break their silence and fill in some of the missing parts of her story. Her sister would say, "It's really hard. I would ask my mom all the time, 'Have you tried to find Claudette anymore?' Explaining that it's been really hard on her, but also on Claudette's kids. And everyone needs to know what happened and who was responsible. The kids were just toddlers when their mother disappeared." Claudette Jean Zebolsky Powers was missing for 39 years, and an unidentified Jane Doe for 37. Had she lived the life she deserved, she would be 61 years old today. Huge thanks for watching all the way to the end, and a big thanks to all of you who consistently like and comment on the videos. The whole dance with YouTube is hard sometimes. Whether you leave a full comment or an emoji, it makes a huge difference. It's a huge push toward the videos being suggested to new people. The next goal is 20,000. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care of yourselves and each other.